Hello, I am Lesley-Anne Rose. My role here at Teesside University is I'm stop motion animation lecturer, but I am talking today about my side role, or what I would see as my main role, as a stop motion animator who makes short stop motion films. And by making, I mean that I write, direct them, and usually animate them myself, but sometimes work with other animators as well in making the films. One of the reasons that I've been asked to give this talk, and I'm quite interested to talk today as part of Animex, which is great to be invited, is because I have a very diverse cast and crew, and my cast is mostly puppets, so you might find that quite amusing. And behind the scenes, I have an all-female creative team. So what I mean by creatives is obviously I am the writer director behind the project that I'm working on at the moment, which is a short film called Type. I have two female producers. I also have two female editors, which I'll explain why I've got two things as I'm doing the talk. And then my other crew members, the people who are making the sets and the puppets with me, are also female. And then my animators, I have a mixture. So I have a real kind of like diverse set of people that I'm working with. And part of this was a big decision on my own, on my behalf, thinking about my own pathway to my career into where I am now and how I got there, and some of the struggles that I kind of encountered on the way, and also some of the help that I was given by other people. So I'm just going to try to tell it like a story, like a narrative that kind of makes sense, so you can kind of see where my thinking has come from over time. So to start with, I had studied fine art originally. I didn't study animation, and decided that I would get into animation. I was doing a lot of community workshops, and I noticed there was lots of call outs for animators, and I've always been interested to learn stop motion. So my fine art background is sculpture and photography, which is the perfect blend to make a stop motion animation, because you're essentially making small sculptures and moving them around, photographing them. So I was like, oh, this is not far out of my skill set. I'll buy some equipment and see if I can't figure out how to do this. So back then there probably was Dragon Frame, but I wasn't aware of it and I couldn't afford it or knew how to use it. So I was kind of blustering around, just taking stills and patching them together and hoping that it would work. I've got some very funny, very early animations. One thing I would 100% recommend to anybody who's trying to make films is that it's really helpful to go through the entire process from start to finish one time, even if it's rubbish, because you learn so much on a full run through. And I think what we can do quite often is get stuck at the part where you're like trying to make everything and you're like, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. And I think sometimes you just need to keep pushing through, make one film that's a bit rubbish but has some good bits, and you can really see where your skills need to be brushed up on. And I found that super helpful. So I've got quite a back catalogue of rubbish films. And then each time I'm like, okay, this bit needs to be better, this bit needs to be better. So the first film that I made that came into any notice was I applied for a random acts commission that was through NFM and Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art, and really wasn't going to apply. And I had a flatmate called Claudia Espana, and she was like saying to me, you really need to apply for this. You've made the film I made before that was kind of amateurish, but it was a lot better. I'd really upped my game, and she persuaded me that I would be in with a chance for to get it. So I put an application in for a film called Spatula Head that was written by, actually it's a comedian who's from Seaham, so from around this area. And I had edited the script, and we ended up getting a commission, which was amazing. It was really good. Went through all of that. That was broadcast on Channel 4. And then, and I thought, well, God, I've made it. And thought, I'll wait for, Disney Pixar to be knocking on the door. And then skipped to 4 or 5 years later, and nothing had happened. Wasn't able to progress anywhere. And I was really kind of struggling with what to do and where to go. Applied for a few more things. Found that I came across quite a lot of sort of blatant sexism, and also kind of insidious sexism, I guess, in the industry, where I kind of would go into a room and wouldn't be the director, writer that they were looking for, to use a kind of Star Wars reference. So you may have heard of the default male. So it's referred to in the book called Data Bias by Caroline Criado Perez, which I've been reading recently. And I kind of had that feeling, it's that sense of when somebody has, they don't have a direct bias. They're not necessarily thinking, oh, I don't want to give this project to a woman who's working in this field, but they have an expectation that the person that they think who is going to be making it, they have a visualization in their mind of this person. You know, and this does also, if you have a look at the book or look anything into it, it also disenfranchises other people, even other men. So there's this kind of way that people imagine this kind of young male auteur who is usually white, who comes in and they're kind of edgy and they're into filmmaking or animation. And that's kind of what they're expecting sometimes with funders when you walk into the room, and you kind of know that you're fighting upstream to get your project listened to or for somebody to be interested in it. And I kind of feel like that sometimes is really in the background, and that's one of the reasons that I'm quite interested in challenging that. One of the other reasons that my stories have changed over time as well is the next animation that I was going to make. I started writing an animation myself. So if you remember, I said that the Spatula Head wasn't actually written by me, but I edited the script together. So for this next one, I wanted to write it myself, and I started writing a story about this a boy who had a giant thumb. I quite like the surreal stories. And my daughter challenged me and said, "Why are you writing about a boy? Why don't you write about a girl?" And I was saying to her, "Well, you don't really see stories about girls in animation." And she was saying, "Well, surely you are the person to fix that." And I thought, you know, she's entirely right. You need to be able to see more females on screen. And if I'm a female writer-director, then why am I not writing about things that are inside my own experience? And that really made me think about how I viewed animation. And when I'm watching animation, and it challenged me to have more of a critique about what is put out there, which I'm still looking at today in terms of content. So the two things that I guess for me that I think are important in terms of having diversity in your stories and in your crew, so the people, the creative team behind them, is that you need more representation, definitely in animation and in film in general, but in animation in particular. There's very poor representation of anything outside a boy and his dog. And if you look at the numbers, it's not represented by cash. So the biggest grossing animated film of all time is Frozen 2, which features two female main characters. So the reason behind it, I think, is that often the creative team are male and will kind of go towards their experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a way to criticize that. I'm looking for equality and a sense of like there should be more stories out there. And I think there's a lot of stories that aren't being told. So for myself, when I started writing, I thought I'm going to write a more female character. So the project I'm writing at the moment is based around a female character. It's based actually on a friend of mine who has a lot of allergies. I have allergies myself, and she is allergic to just about everything. So I was like really intrigued to write this kind of love story about somebody who's maybe a little bit lonely because they're isolated because of their allergies. And then essentially it's a love story, but I'm not going to give away much of the plot. It's 10 minutes and it's funded by the BFI, so it'll be 10 to 12 minutes. And what I wanted to look at with the characters as well is to look at a way of not making a very cute, typical looking character. So maybe it's somebody that looked a little bit different, and not kind of so much like a Disney princess or like a manic pixie dream girl type character. And also inside the plot, the character, when they do start looking on the dating scene, they go on a dating site that is for same-sex females. It's not a massive part of the story, but it is in there, a bit like how in Toy Story that you don't realise that Andy is just has a mother in the story, and I really love that that's in there, but it's not the whole focus of the story, but it gives us a sense of like a different type of family in some of those stories that we don't see in animation a lot. And I think that sometimes that does happen really nicely, in some of the bigger films, that you do see that coming in. So essentially what I wanted to do was behind the camera. I think it's really important that you have people writing who have experience of the characters that they're writing about. I don't think that it's always okay to have male characters writing female characters or writing diverse characters. I think it can be, but there definitely needs to be the genuine, authentic voice coming through of somebody's real experience, but also as well, in a way, it could be seen that you're taking stories from other people, and those people should be allowed to tell those stories themselves. And I know that this can be quite a controversial comment or thing to say, and I do think that there should be some flexibility there, but I also think until we're in an equal state where people from diverse backgrounds are being creative and being able to get those stories made, that I think it's not okay that powerful male creatives can write for other characters. Okay, behind the scenes. So for myself, I was helped along in my career by a couple of amazing female creatives who helped me along the way, and producers who were really enthusiastic and wanted to see my work shown and made. So when I started to get some funding for some projects later down the line, I also wanted to be able to do that. Just a very quick short note about the Northeast. There's a really small amount of animation industry in the Northeast. A lot of women can't travel because they have other responsibilities. So in the Northeast, you get a lot less female creatives being able to work in the film industry and in the animation industry because they have other things on the go. So for me, it was really interesting. I wanted to be able to bring a few people along with me. So the producer that I have, I'm the director. The producer that I have is working with another producer from Manchester. So I have Dana and Maria, my two producers. And Maria is kind of shadowing Dana because Dana has more experience. They're both amazing, brilliant people I'm so pleased to be working with. Editor-wise, is similar. I have an editor shadowing another editor so that we can bring another person along in the Northeast who is also a woman who will have more experience because they'll have the BFI credit on their name. They'll be able to get more projects and bigger projects, especially ones based in the Northeast. I'm also helping a young female director who needs some experience shadowing, so she's going to be shadowing me along with this project. So I'm really kind of invested in kind of bringing people along. I'm hoping that I've given you a coherent sense of what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do it. I do think it's really hard to get into these industries for anybody. It's really challenging. I think if you're privileged and you have money and you can do a lot of stuff for free, that's brilliant, and that's great if you can do that. But a lot of people can't, and a lot of people that I know that are struggling to break into the industry might have 4 or 5 other jobs, might be from a working class background, they don't have a foot in the door. So I'm really, really keen to kind of help people come along with that. So I do help other people that aren't women as well. I just have to say that. So I have other people that I kind of I feel like are outside of that mainstream or don't have a foot into the industry, that, their stories or the work that they want to do is really interesting, and I'm really kind of keen to mentor people into that process. So in the end, that's what I have to say. Always consider diversity. Don't just go with the traditional, tropes that are out there. I'm so sick of seeing them. I feel like in The Incredibles, this is the last thing I wanted to say, that Violet, whose special power is being invisible, her special power as a young female should be being visible. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure. We need to be visible behind the camera and visible in front of the camera in order for us to have some change.
Hi, I'm Emma Smith. I'm Head of Talent at Creative Assembly. We are a UK games developer and we're almost 800 strong. We are really passionate and really care about our education outreach programme, which is a legacy project which I founded and I lead. And here today I'm going to talk to you about a diversity and inclusion initiative that I set up as part of the legacy project, and how it worked really well for us, and some things that you might want to do to take away for yourselves, and hopefully be able to really get rid of some of those myths and misconceptions with some of the students that we've met and also the parents and the educators as well, and really try to get under the skin and under the hood of why so many young women don't feel that the games industry is somewhere that they want to be, because of those misconceptions and some of those myths. So before I go on and tell you a little bit more about that, I just wanted to share some of the myths and misconceptions that we actually hear, which we feel are like quite damaging, but I think it's important that you understand that this is what some people actually think. So the misconceptions we hear about game dev are that men find it easier to get jobs in games than women, and that's just wrong. We know that that's not the case. It's not that men find it easier, it's just that we seem to have so many more male applicants. And in my role, I work really hard to try and reach out to any of our underrepresented groups, but especially measure some stats on how we're doing with that. And we're getting a lot better. In fact, we actually saw a bit of an increase in female applicants all round on our roles at CA, and we especially find that with our entry level roles. So we've got a really amazing, promising change for the future of our diversity and inclusion in our industry, but there's still a lot more to do, because that's how people feel, even though we know that's really not the case, and actually it's not allowed. And another thing as well, I actually think that more males play games than women. I actually dug into this. It's wrong. The number of female players, it makes up so much more than men, especially when you look at the whole age gaps and the whole brackets. It's actually more like well over 30% of players are actually women, compared to 17% are male. And when we talk about games, we talk about all of them and all the different platforms they get. And when I share that with students, they're always surprised. But actually, when I share it with developers, they're really not surprised at all when we think about all the different types of games and the way we can access our games today. So when we heard those, and what did we want to do about it? Because I especially wanted to do something about it when I had my daughter in 2014, and I thought about what kind of world that she might want to work in. I really wanted to think about how we could not just talk about wanting to make that change, but how can we practically do it? Well, I thought about it, and I thought about what it was going to be like when I was a teenager, and the teenagers in my family, and also friends' children. And they said they just get talked at all the time. They always just get told what things are like, but they very rarely see it. And actually, they really value actually having that practical experience. So we decided to stop telling them and start showing them. We showed the students themselves what it was really like to come into a game studio. But rather than just doing a really boring tour, well, maybe it would be so boring to some students, but actually we think it's amazing. But we really wanted to bring that experience to life. We started running motion capture experience sessions. We're really fortunate at CA that we have the space and the facility for students to come in and use a motion capture experience. So students would come in with their teachers, and for the first couple of sessions we really focused on young female students, because we were already working with very engaged students at things like code clubs. They were predominantly male. We wanted to reach the students that were unreachable. So we engaged with female students and brought them in. But we also invited their teachers and other educators as well to be able to see what it was really like. And we started running those sessions. We showed them storyboarding, the technical side of things, how to be able to act those things out and what it gets captured, and then what happens with that afterwards. We then took them into the studio so they could see that environment, to meet the people that work on those assets afterwards, and understand that no, it isn't just about being a programmer. There is far, far more than that. They got to see the environment. There is a professional environment. They got to meet other female developers, people from all different backgrounds and cultures, and what a warm, embracing environment the games industry really is. And for those of the students that didn't feel entirely comfortable, then, you know, they could come in and see what it was actually like. But what was really interesting as a part of the whole experience is that we wanted to see what they thought were the barriers to them joining the industry. And we also wanted to find out what they thought afterwards. So I'm going to share exactly what their thoughts are with you now, and some of it might be surprising and some of it might not be. So here are some of the quotes from the young women who visited the studio about working in games. So before the mocap and the studio tour, I said, what do you see are the barriers to being in the games industry? Again, they said, people think games are only for boys. We know that's not the case. You only have to look at the success of Animal Crossing and how it brought people together in the pandemic. And we know from the research and the articles that actually that title itself actually brought a lot of positivity to people's lives. So they're not only for boys, they're for everyone. People stereotype and think everyone in games are nerds. Well, yeah, I'm a nerd. I'm proud to be a nerd. But I understand for teenagers that they're looking to find a part of being a collective. But actually the students that do find themselves in that particular stereotypical group will find they are in very good company in our industry, where we can all share our common interests and passions and feel completely embraced for that. And also when a student said, I worry I would be overlooked being a girl. And that's a very worrying thing for someone at that age to feel that that would be a barrier to them coming into our industry. So they felt it could be sexist. It could be male dominated. Yes, it might be male dominated, but that doesn't mean that it's a negative experience. We know that there are many male allies in our studios. And actually we focus and concentrate on the things that we've got in common, which is our love and our passion for games. That's what's the thing that brings us together, even though it may be made more dominated than another. And in fact, we are seeing great strides with more women joining our industry. And again, you have to be a programmer to join the games industry. And we know that's not the case. After we have all of these, then we start to share, perhaps there are a little bit more truths. And then when they come into the studio, I'm not just telling them that it's not just about being a programmer, they actually see it. So after they had all of this, and I shared how many different job titles we have, how many game studios there are, meeting some of the wonderful people, seeing what the environment is really like, understanding that we have artists and programmers and designers and PR and marketing executives, people that work with social media, communications, a finance department, human resources, facilities. There are huge parts to be played in how our games come together and how they get out to the people who like to play them. So after the motion capture and studio tour, I asked the same question again, but how do you feel about the industry now? And it was an overwhelming change. They said, I would feel proud to be one of the women proving herself to work just as well as the men in a subject. I feel confident and comfortable in, no matter the male domination. I would see it as a reason to show people that women can do just as well. And this is one of my favourites. I'd want to work hard to prove that I'm better than them. So someone who feels really strongly. Another one to say, as long as I was respected and treated equally for the skills I have, I would not mind. And that's all anybody could ever ask for their children. And actually anything you would ask for yourself is to be treated equally for the skills that you have. Another one said, I don't really care. I think a gender is a gender and we are all equal, and that absolutely warms my heart to see that women are feeling this way. And also I wouldn't mind as gender doesn't matter nor make a difference, because again we focus on the things that we have in common rather than what separates us, even though we can celebrate that. So what can we do now? Well, in all of this, all COVID has actually taught us is that we can be the ultimate problem solvers. Actually being remote has helped solve some of those issues with reaching out to people in low income backgrounds that wouldn't have the funds to be able to travel, to be able to reach our events, to be able to come to our studio. We've still been able to maintain a sense of that, but we're equally very excited about having in-person events, our motion capturing event, and for people to be able to go back into the studio and to actually see some bright faces, and we hope that that will be soon. But what else can other people do? What can you do to try and capture a slice of that? What can you do to try and help to come together as a collective, to try and help continue to strive forward and strengthen and fortify our brilliant games industry? Well, be an ambassador of our profession. Be the person others aspire to be. Absolutely do not underestimate the power that you have to influence the people that are walking on the path of the journey you've already taken. You've arrived at the place that many of these students are already on their way to try and get to. You've already got there. So share your journey and talk about the positivity. Help them get up to where you are, because they absolutely want to be there. And be bold and confident, but support each other. I think it's equally important to be able to share between different studios kind of successes and programs and projects we've all done. No, we won't be doing them exactly the same. In the same way, we're not making the same games. But actually the thing that we all want is to have a stronger, better, more diverse and inclusive industry. Because when we have that, we have more creativity, and more creativity means more exciting games for us to all play, enjoy and love. Network. Let each other know about different opportunities, but also talk about your career paths. If you have an opportunity to go back to your old school, or to be able to talk at a university, to write a blog, to support BAFTA Young Game Designer, to work with the student ambassadors at UK, to get involved with Intergames, do that. It won't take long, especially now we're doing this remotely, where travel just isn't a barrier to us doing this anymore. The more of us share our experiences, the more information the next generation will have, and they will absorb it, and they will be positive and they will take it forward. But most of all, be curious. Think about what we can do rather than what we can't. Yeah, we might have a really tight schedule, but you might be able to write a blog piece. You might be able to just help out or judge a competition or a game jam. You might be able to just share that little bit of advice. You might be able to just talk and provide a lecture. But wherever interaction you have, it doesn't need to be mammoth. You can just take small steps. If you have somebody that's really passionate about education outreach or giving back in our industry, in your organisation, give them the room to be able to do that, because they will do a stellar, wonderful, fantastic job of doing that. Imagine if we all just a small part of this in our industry. There are nearly 2,500 games companies in the UK alone. If we all do a small part, we can make a bigger difference. And we all don't have to do the same thing, but one thing is better than no thing. So I hope that you'll be able to take something from that, realise that you can make an enormous difference. And I look forward to speaking to you later with the questions and answers that will be coming through. And don't be afraid, it'll be really lovely to hear from you. Thanks ever so much. I'll see you soon.
Hello everyone, my name is Sally and I am the CEO of Silent Games. Today I'll be chatting about basically my career path, also about building Silent Games and about how I built the advocacy group WOMG as well, in the hopes that it'll help you with your career path and just see what kind of routes you can go down as well. I've got 15 minutes and this talk is usually quite a bit longer, so I'm hoping to condense it down and hopefully it'll be on time. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, building a game studio and pretty much everything that I've learned up until this point. I've got two sections, which is basically about building knowledge about university, playtesting, the various experiences I had in AAA development and indie development, and publishing as well, and then a little bit about creating the studio and creating WOMG as well. So a little bit about me. It's actually over 10 years in the industry now, I think. I started as a playtester at Team 17. So that's basically when you go in like every couple of months to just play the game and give them feedback. It's usually unpaid. That's how I got my first experience in the game industry ever, basically. I worked for 6 years in AAA at Ubisoft. I started as a tester and then moved into production. So I've got a bit about the timeline of my career coming up in a bit later. I also worked for 3-ish years in indie development and also indie publishing at No More Robots. And then I've been at Silent Games full-time since. And yeah, I've always been interested in video games. Obviously, I've got my inspirations on screen here as well. So I've got a Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is one of the first games that I played where I was like, right, I want to work in games. Obviously, the original Pokemon games as well. So yeah, there's a few bits and bobs that I've been interested in. And then I've got the WOMG logo there. Originally, we started WOMG in the Northeast only, but we've branched out to a few other places since then. And WOMG is an organization that helps women in the industry, basically. So yeah, that's me. So the first bit I want to talk about was kind of building my interest in video games and how I kind of learned stuff in general. And the first thing to say about this is I was always super nosy and really curious about stuff. So in terms of building knowledge, I'd always be really curious about ask loads of questions. Make sure that if you have the opportunity to ask questions, you're asking stuff that you want to know. You might get different answers from people, but that just increases the amount of knowledge you have, which is cool. And then another bit is basically about trying to have a growth mindset. I don't always have this, but if you want to know more about the growth mindset, there's a great book called Mindset that you can read. But this is essentially learning from your failures, accepting that failure is just a part of the process of learning in life. When you get a job rejection or you fail a test, you'll get the answers back. You'll maybe get some feedback on your portfolio if you're lucky as well, which just helps you develop and grow further. So these are the two things that I try and keep in mind when I'm trying to progress anything. And in early life, I was just super nosy about stuff. So yeah, that's how I was learning in the beginning. Another thing I wanted to talk about is how to make certain choices. So maybe a lot of you are currently either at university or have chosen a particular course and wondering if you've kind of made the right decision. And the way I picked my university course was basically I was interested in super techie stuff and technical things and also art things. So I picked animation because I thought those would be a good combination of the two. But I ended up not liking animation that much, so I did loads of other stuff as well. But that's how I ended up picking what I wanted to do. And this kind of chart that I have here, Ikigai, it's basically your reason for existing, your reason for living. And it's basically how to find something that fits you. So it's a combination of what you love doing, what the world needs, what you can be paid to do, and what you're good at. And those are combining your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation into one kind of thing. So if you're at a crossroads in any kind of choice, really, this is a good way to kind of set you on the path to finding something that's meaningful to you. And I inadvertently did this when I picked computer animation, even though I didn't actually end up doing that in the end. But at the time, I think it was useful to think about things in this way. So yeah, hopefully that helps you a little bit with your choices as well. In terms of how I got my first foot in the door, which I mentioned earlier, the most useful thing was to get industry experience, which is really hard to do. It's very competitive. But like I said, the playtesting stuff was really, really good to have on my CV. So just having Team 17 on my CV, even though it was this temporary, playtesting experience, not a full-time job or anything, that was super useful. So yeah, I'd recommend trying to find something like that, even if it's just going in for a day or two and seeing what they're up to and giving feedback on the game. That was enough to get me in the door at Ubisoft. So yeah, I recommend looking for things like that if you haven't already. Okay, so in terms of my AAA game development then, so basically I started as a functionality tester on Just Dance 4. So again, that was 10 years ago. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about like my career path and some of the choices that I made along the way, in the hopes that if you're at these crossroads at any point in your career, you can, think back and wonder why certain decisions were made and maybe get some guidance on that from me. So yeah, I started as a functionality tester and then moved into development testing. So in terms of functionality and development testing is a bit more involved in that you test something before it goes into the game. You work more closely with the developers. Sometimes that's called embedded QA. And at that point in my career, there was a decision point to be made, like, did I want to stay in QA or did I want to take a different path? Because an opportunity came available when I was working on Watch Dogs, which was basically to cover someone's maternity leave in production. And I didn't really know anything about production at the time, but I thought it might be something I was interested in. I might be interested in. So I took that opportunity, and that set me on the path, the production path. It's just something that I found gelled with me a lot, and there are a lot of roles in the industry that are not the standard roles, I guess, like game design or level design, programming, 3D art. There's a lot of support roles and other roles that aren't talked about as much out there. So if you are like unsure of where you want to go in your career or not sure exactly what you want to do in games, you just know you want to work in games. That was me at the end of uni. So I wouldn't worry too much. There is something out there for you. You just have to go and find what that is. So yeah, for me, that was production. And I started my role as a project coordinator, which was like the very, very first production job that I had. And that was back on Just Dance. So I worked on Just Dance 4, then I moved to Watch Dogs, worked on Watch Dogs as a QA tester for a while, well, a development tester, and then went back to Just Dance, the next Just Dance. I think they changed the naming conventions for Just Dance after that. But yeah, I worked as a project coordinator on that. And then after that, I moved up the ranks in production while I was working on Tom Clancy's The Division. Yeah, and I left Ubisoft after 6 years. I'd worked on The Division for a long time, and I was going to be on The Division 2, so I worked a little bit on The Division 2. And I felt like it was time for a change at that point. But I knew I still wanted to work in production, of course. So at that point, I made a decision, right, I've learned a lot here, but I've been in AAA quite a while now, and I'm going to be on a similar project. And am I still going to be learning a lot? Am I still going to be developing my skills? Is this something that's going to interest me for the next few years? And I was like, at that point, I think it's time for something new. So that's how I made the decision to jump ship after 6 years. And it is quite hard to make the decision to leave your first job, but I think it was a good decision in the end because I learned a bunch at the next company, which I'll talk about now. So yeah, as soon as I left Ubisoft, I got a senior producer role at a company called Hammerhead. They specialize in like AR and VR projects. So it was a lot of new technology, a brand new team and a smaller team as well. So while at Ubisoft, I had a lot of, I was working on basically a small subsection of the game at that point. I had quite a big team. It was like 30 or 40 people at the time. But it was a very small slice of the pie. Whereas when I went to a smaller studio, I was looking at things more broadly. So I had more of an overview of how things were going. And I also was dealing with multiple projects at once. So it wasn't me just on a small bit of the game. I was managing multiple projects. And that was a really interesting learning experience. And I also got to work on a bunch of stuff that I didn't really touch at Ubisoft, like the financial side of things and all of that, which has actually really helped me in my own studio. There was a lot I learned at Hammerhead that's helped me develop my own studio as well. Around the time, I think it was a few months after I started at Hammerhead, I can't remember the exact timelines now, but around like a few months after, I launched Women Making Games. I just felt that there was a lot of organizations in the South to support women in games, but there wasn't much in the North or the Northeast at the time. And I just felt like there was plenty of us up here. So I wanted to start something like that. And then I had a bunch of the admins really help me set up an awesome launch party for WOMG. And to be honest, it started really organically. I was just inviting people to lunch and we were just chatting about our careers and the kind of issues we were facing and how to overcome them. And then we just wanted to make it something more formal and more of an organization itself. And it went from there. And then after the launch, we did a lot more events, regular networking, social events. We started off with not very much money, to be honest. And yeah, it was just gathering people together at one point. And I would say that if you are interested in creating an organization like that yourself, you can just start small and see if there's interest and listen to your members about what they want and go from there. So yeah, I launched WOMG. And then in 2018, myself and our other co-founder, Joseph, founded Silent Games. So Silent Games, we were started basically to build the concept for the studio and the game as well. I was still working full time at that point, so I was doing stuff like outside of work, but Joseph mainly did the game concept and was working full time at the studio. And then it started to get to a point where a couple of years in, I'd learned a lot from where I was at Hammerhead, and I felt like it was time to try and knuckle down and learn some more things about the kind of game publishing world. And an opportunity just came up that just seemed really, really good for learning. And it was also part-time, which meant that I could do some more work on Silent Games while learning a whole bunch at a publishing studio as well. So that was another decision point right there. So I left Hammerhead to go to No More Robots. And like I said, that's game publishing. So it's all about getting your game to market, supporting the developers in doing that, making sure the game gets noticed, supporting them with QA and stuff like that. And also it allowed me to see a lot of pitches that were coming in to No More Robots as well. And I was out there trying to pitch my game to publishers. And I was also working for a publisher, seeing the pitches that were coming in. So I felt like that was like a really good decision to try and learn a bunch of stuff, because I hadn't really touched much of the publishing side of the industry before. And yeah, that was super useful, and it was a really nice company to work for, and yeah, learned a whole bunch there. So as you can see, there's like certain points in my career where I had to make a decision, figure out what I wanted to do in the future, and then take that leap, which can be a bit scary to do, but it's all kind of worked out for the best. So that's yeah, maybe I got super lucky, but I think that's one of the things, is not being afraid to make a change if you feel like there's more stuff you can learn elsewhere to keep developing your career like that. I think that's super useful. And then after a year at No More Robots, we had, obviously I was working part-time at No More Robots, and alongside that we were developing a demo to pitch to publishers with Silent Games. And we started pitching to a bunch of people, and we had really good conversations with an investment company called Amplifier Game Invest, and things started to get really serious with them, and we basically got investment from them in the end. And at that point I was like, obviously I've learned loads of stuff from No More Robots, but it's time to work at Silent Games full time now that we have the opportunity and the funding to do so. So that was another decision point where I was like, right, I'm taking the full jump. I'm leaping into this full time. But yeah, that was a really exciting time to obviously get the funding for the studio and to be able to hire a bunch of people, and yeah, just get everything going properly. But yeah, I wanted to mention, like, you've probably seen a trend in what I've been saying, is that everything that I was interested in doing, I learned a bunch of stuff from each of the activities that I was doing. So when I was doing WOMG, I was doing budgeting and stuff. I was setting up events. I was talking to a bunch of people in the community to get this brand off the ground. And I think that's helped me in my other roles with No More Robots. As I said, I learned a bunch that helped me with pitching with Silent Games, because there was a lot of stuff in the pitching process that I'd never really touched or done before. But with my experience at No More Robots, I was able to learn a bunch of stuff and then do some good pitches there as well. And yeah, and all the stuff I was learning at Silent Games was helping my other roles as well. Like, there was just so much linked, I called it linked learning, but yeah, there was so much crossover there that just really helped. So if you are starting something, I recommend thinking about, like, how it's all going to link together in terms of what your main mission is going to be, and where you can get the most value from learning. Yeah, I think that helps. In terms of the studio development then, just in case, I don't know, that maybe it's too early to start thinking about making your own studio. I'm not sure what kind of stage everyone will be at in their careers, but if this is your ultimate goal, I guess it's worth talking about the process that we went through. So originally, obviously, we started with the studio, what we wanted the studio to be, and the studio branding, and the game concept kind of went hand in hand in that. You can't really do those separately, because what your studio is very heavily linked to what kind of games you make. So we then started working on the game concept. Once we had kind of a solid basis for the game concept, we started doing some fundraising. So we got the UK Games Fund, one of their rounds, which allowed us to hire some people. And we also worked with Teesside University, in a partnership with Teesside University, to get some interns that helped us make that first demo. So obviously the next step, once we've got the game concept and we've got some people to work on the demo, we started to make the demo, and a lot of publishers need to see either a vertical slice or a demo or some representation of the game in order to fund you. So yeah, that was really important that we had that. And once we'd done that and that was all wrapped up, we had the game concept and we had the demo, we moved into fundraising round 2. And this is the point at which I mentioned earlier, where we started talking to Amplifier. We talked to a whole bunch of different publishers and investors and stuff like that, but Amplifier felt like a really good fit for us, and that's what we ended up doing in the end. And we got full funding for the studio, and the studio is now 14 people, and we've got our first game in development. So yeah, that's kind of the pathway and the timeline that got us to where we are today and got us funded with our team that we have now. I guess it's just interesting to see the kind of ebb and flow of working things out. That's a very condensed and summarized version of it, but hopefully that's helpful for anyone that's interested in starting their own studio and wondering what's out there. Like the UK Games Fund was a really, really good resource for us. So if there's, if you're starting a studio, you can definitely apply. There's going to be future rounds. I think they've just opened one of their new rounds this week, actually. So yeah, they're going to keep going, I think. And yeah, so as I mentioned, I've already said a little bit about Silent Games, but just in case anyone doesn't know, we are based in Newcastle. And yeah, it was founded in 2018. And, we were part of Ubisoft and other AAA, we were making AAA titles at the time. And our goal now is to build a AA studio that has a specific focus on RPGs that focus on autonomy, mastery, and purpose as well. Oh, there's a typo in that slide, but yes, it's mastery. And yeah, we have a new IP in development right now, just in case you wanted to know a little bit more about the studio. So yeah, that's my very condensed version of that talk. I'm hoping that just seeing the different career choices that you can make, how to build a studio and how to build an advocacy organization and all of those bits of information were useful for you. And I think there's going to be a Q&A, so hopefully I'll be back for that. But yeah, hopefully just seeing that was useful. And yeah, really appreciate it. And I hope you're all enjoying Animex. And thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, my name is Tara Mustapha, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the CEO and founder of Coven, the first global games industry accelerator for underrepresented talent. I'd like to welcome you to this talk, The Grimoire of Gender and Coven's Quest to Dispel Inequality. This talk is the start of a conversation, and I'm going to kick it off, and I wholly expect each of you to continue this conversation either with me or with your communities, because the single truth out there in all of this is that we can't do this alone. You're all here because you have vested interest in gender inclusivity and the video games industry. So to that effect, please feel free to reach out and let's work to move the needle. So first off, a bit about me. I've been in the industry for a very long time and have made lots of games at lots of studios on lots of platforms. My career path began as a game designer and a firefighter, and I specialize in making games feel good.
Hi everyone, I'm Karla Reyes and I'm the head of business development at Coven, and I also had the privilege of actually being a student in Coven's pilot Unity development bootcamp in 2019. I'm a product manager at Niantic and I'm very interested and passionate about equality, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. I co-founded an employee resource group at Square Enix focused on racial and ethnic diversity, and all of my work at Coven is really about trying to embed these values into our community and focus on games for social impact as well.
So this was a really challenging talk because there's so many angles and steps that are possible, and I want you to resonate with all of that energy and the possibility. As you can tell from Karla's amazing journey, this is a really exciting opportunity and place to be part of. And so Coven was born out of my own experience as a developer and witnessing the struggle of my friends who found it increasingly difficult to stay in the games industry. And it's an industry where we're all really, really passionate about the games that we create and the people that are involved. And, one of the things that I constantly hear is, well, how do we move the needle and where do we start? And this is what I was hoping to help with through my learning and experience at Coven and what we're trying to do in making it more accessible for diverse people to be able to be a part of the industry and to make sure that they're heard and that they can have long careers. within the industry, and change the amount of content and the representation in what you see and what you play. So I'm really glad that you're all here and that you want to be a part of the industry. And I'd like to reassure you that this is the best place to start. And the first thing that I recommend is that you get in touch with what the games industry currently looks like, and don't be deterred by it. This is a really great opportunity to be that advocate for change. This is a snapshot of the industry, and a large portion of the folks who identify as marginalized actually end up leaving the industry after 5 years. So there's very little representation at senior levels. And we all know through media that allowing for diverse gaze allows for richer content experience and removes the under from underrepresented. Just look at the effects of Bridgerton, for example. And that's what we're here to change at Code Coven. And we are seeing impact around the games industry globally. So let's continue that. So I founded Code Coven in 2019 with the mission to move the needle and change the systems in place. And it wasn't about getting diverse people in the door, but giving them a path in career advancement and mentorship. So we built all-encompassing career programs with heart-based training in mind, creating a safe space where marginalized folks aren't the minority in order to help people feel supported in challenging the current norms. And the first thing that we did was build a team that mirrors our values. And I'm very lucky to say that we found these amazing people. The experience is out there, and we're uniquely positioned to educate and mentor people from marginalized groups. Our team are all underrepresented game developers with diverse experience across the industry, from indie to AAA blockbusters. And it's with this team that we decided we needed to take this approach to achieve parity in the games industry. So for every program that we run in Code Coven, we try to reduce anxiety and enable people to succeed, people who have constantly endured microaggressions, and it takes time and care. And I want to be clear that I don't think these systems were created to inherently cause trauma. They're just unconscious. And, as game designers, we know what it's like to put ourselves in the shoes of players, to design first-time user experiences and tutorials. So this is something that I truly believe that we can challenge and we can tackle. And, with Code Coven, it begins with these communication styles. We try and make our applications as explicit and simple as possible so that no one feels like they're being caught out. We acknowledge the time and effort people put into their applications with kindness at our core. With a time, we keep open office hours and communication channels open to provide support to our participants. With touch, please don't go touching anyone without their consent, but what we do here is try to make everything feel like a Spiritfarer hug. We try and make things feel soft and gentle, with words of affirmation, with validation, and access to our team for further questions. And it doesn't have to be long. Personally, I'm best with bullet points, but I try to make sure that the people that feel like that I have their back, and that's what the whole Code Coven team does, is we have your back and champion for you and each other. With acts of service, we create programs that react to the needs of the students. So no two programs are exactly the same. We have to react quickly because one size doesn't fit all, and we look at what the needs of the participants are and curate content in order to meet those needs. And with gifts, well, in a lot of our programs, as Karla will talk about later, we pay out stipends so that we acknowledge marginalized folks in the games industry are a scarce resource. So why are they getting paid less than their majority counterparts, which is systemic in a lot of industries around the world? And for those that are allies, I implore you to champion this within your industries. So that's all well and good, but does it actually result in anything? Over to you, Karla.
Thanks, Tara. So at Code Coven, our operating model is called the Triforce, a tribute to our beloved Zelda, of course, and we have 3 core pillars, which are the Academy, the Accelerator, and the Studio. So through the Academy, we offer online courses in real time in an intimate environment that are taught by marginalized leaders who are actively in industry and can bring in fresh, relevant content to the curriculum. Through the Accelerator, we support different studios and teams to band together and work on game projects from concept to completion, or bring their projects to the next level to be able to be pitch ready or publishable. And then through the teaching studio, we want to give our students some practical experience to work on games that are either live or in production, and actually partner with studios to be able to do that. So just a snapshot of our academy. These are the faces of the creators behind the games created. And you can see here that one of the core assets here is that representation matters. All of the students here created their own content and went through our Intro to Game Making course, which is one of the ways that we aim to reduce barriers to entry, because this course is available to students who have no prior game dev experience and are coming in, and just within the span of 8 weeks, they're able to create games. So here are some testimonials from our students. We also focus on values like mental and physical well-being and health. Adeniki here, for example, created a game about the need to drink more water. Monica created a game about mental health. So you can really see that there's a diversity in the games that are created by our students.
And with our accelerator, we supported underrepresented devs at various stages of their careers. Last year, we launched the summer program, which was an incubator-style internship for university students and recent graduates whose career opportunities had been cancelled due to the pandemic. We banded together multidisciplinary teams to create games from concept to completion and simulated the entire game dev process from pre-production to launch in order to help them get robust portfolio pieces to get their first job in the industry. These are a few of the games that our participants made last year. Games that told diverse stories, that brought together developers from Wisconsin to Jamaica to South Africa who wouldn't have had the chance to necessarily work together before. And through the program, we had guest presentations and direct mentorship from our strong mentor network from across the industry, encouraging the participants to directly connect with at least 6 industry professionals for the duration of the program to guide them.
We also ran an accelerator called Elevate 2020, which was in partnership with the GDC Relief Fund and Wings Interactive. This was for slightly more established indie studios whose opportunities had also been thwarted due to the pandemic. We stepped in, and with some remaining funds from the GDC Relief Fund, we were able to create Elevate, where we brought in mentors from the industry as well and supported these teams to be able to take their projects to the next level and be pitch ready or publishable. Finally, the teaching studio. So I was fortunate enough to participate in the Unity Development Bootcamp, as I alluded to earlier. And through this experience, I was actually able to team up with my fellow classmates and work on early prototypes for a mobile game for the HBO series Insecure, which was primarily designed for a diverse audience and has a Black female protagonist. This is developed by Glow Up Games, and we partnered with Glow Up Games to be able to do this. So we want to be able to continue to work with the studios and give the students who go through our courses the actual experience and also the credits, which are really essential to build that portfolio and CV to be able to succeed and thrive in the industry. This was also an unparalleled opportunity because I was able to work with an all-female dev team from all over the world on this project.
And sure, we just make games, and our games don't save lives, but the opportunities that come with making them do. Marginalized developers are even more so impacted by global crisis, yet the games industry is thriving. So there is no excuse. And that's what Code Coven is here to do, is to try and open these doors, have that ripple effect, believe in solidarity, and show the diverse opportunities and content out there and empower people. And we're certainly excited about what the future can hold.
So a snapshot about our impact just in 2020 alone. We supported over 100 underrepresented developers throughout our programs, many of whom identify as female or non-binary, many of whom identify as people of color. We launched our BAME/BIPOC Scholarship Fund last year, and amidst the Black Lives Matter movement. And we were able to receive over 250 applications in only 3 days from over 25 countries. So it really shows our global reach and how we really want to be able to foster a community that is quite diverse, not just from a racial and ethnic perspective, but a geographic perspective as well, and many other factors beyond that. And here's Tara's and my contact information if you're interested in learning more about our programs, or if you're from a studio and interested in partnering or sponsoring us in any capacity.
Thank you all for joining us and listening to everything that we're trying to do and offer. And we really hope to see you as part of our community, our cohorts, or just, send us an email and tell us what you're playing and get in touch. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.